Would Andrew Cole please come up? We found a pin here. It's a harness racing pin. It's a horse and a sulky. If anybody owns it, it's up here on the podium. Andrew Cole's a positive man. His swimmers told me he can't buy gas without befriending the attendant. He's recognized across the Maritimes by his monster only gold medal in the Canada Summer Games in Thunder Bay. Some of his closest friends say that he's gotten away with murder by flashing his pearly whites over the years. But of course, that's not for us to comment on in a presentation as serious as this. Ironically, young Andrew didn't show much promise as an age group swimmer. He did make a lasting impression, however, on Nancy Garapick, when as an 11-year-old, standing right in front of her, his bathing suit split right up the back. Garapick's a few years older than Andrew and took full advantage of her advanced years to needle him about that forever. The fact that he hadn't experienced any great success early didn't make his decision any easier when he sat down as a 15-year-old and tried to decide whether to continue with swimming or with his other love, and that was for water skiing. Dartmouth Crusader coach David Fry nudged him toward his final decision by reminding him just how much the team needed him. A year or so passed before he was sure he had made the right decision. If you ask Andrew Coles what was the greatest sacrifice he had to make in the name of swimming, he'll tell you about Hermabella. Hermabella was the beloved VW Bug, which ended wrapped around a lamppost 6 a.m. one morning midway to practice. Andrew went to the garage and salvaged the hubcaps and the license plate in case one day he invests in a new buggy. As a 17-year-old, he and Coach Fry flew to Toronto. They flew to Toronto because Cole needed one more impressive race to ensure his spot at the Nationals. They flew up in the morning. Cole swam his race, qualified for the Nationals, and flew home that night. The fact that he was able to produce under that kind of pressure did much to bolster his confidence in years to come. Most of Andrew's international acclaim he garnered during the years he was at Dow under Nova Scotia Sport Heritage Center Hall of Famer Nigel Kemp. The Dow swimmers seem annually to have the best spirit of all the Dow teams. Certainly during Cole's tenure, there was no exception. His mom, Barbara, says they used to do everything together and usually ended up taking a cab back to the Coles house, whether Andrew happened to be with them or not. Andrew Coles, ladies and gentlemen, was Nova Scotia Male Swimmer of the Year in 1980, 1981, 1982, 1983, 1984, 1985, and 1986. He was Dalhousie team captain 1983, 85, and 87. He was Dalhousie swimming MVP and an AUAA All-Star in all 5 years he swam, 82, 83, 84, 85, and in 1987. I have 19 in front of those other dates that I... AUAA Male Swimmer of the Year in 83 and also in 1984. He was a CIAU All-Canadian in 82, 83, 84, and 85. He holds the Dalhousie AUAA and Nova Scotia record in both 100 and 200 breaststroke. These awards are primarily based on his having won during his Dalhousie career 17 AUAA medals, 6 silver and 11 gold, and 8 CIAU National Championship medals, 2 bronze, 4 silver, and he was twice a Canadian champion. Coach Nigel Kemp was watching the ladder of these championship races when people surged in front of him, blocking out his view to the finish. Since Andrew was in 5th place at the final turn, Kemp was sure he hadn't missed anything he wanted to see anyway. When the results flashed up on the board, he wished he had thrown some of his considerable weight around to assure his view plane. Andrew Cole closed out a remarkable varsity swimming career as a double finalist in the CIAU Swimming Championship in his home Dalplex pool. To make the finals in these national championships is certainly noteworthy, but for a four-time All-Canadian and national champion, fussing over this event requires a bit of explanation. You might have noted that there is a missing year in Cole's university swimming career. During the swimming season 85-86, Andrew Cole embarked on a full-time training regimen in order to swim for Canada in the Commonwealth Games. In December of that year, he suffered a horrible tobogganing accident on Citadel Hill, which shattered his lower right leg. Lying in the emergency room, Andrew expressed concern about when he'd be able to get back into his swimming practice schedule. David Petrie, son of the famous local orthopedic surgeon, replied that he'd better stop worrying about competitive swimming and start worrying about whether he'd ever walk again. His leg required the insertion of 2 plates and 14 pins, but Andrew Cole did make it back to the starting blocks. The gold medal times in the breaststroke in the Commonwealth Games that year were slower than the times Andrew was swimming at the time of the accident. The disappointment was great, but he nonetheless took the challenge and hit the rehabilitation trail. This man, who was told he would never swim again, was in 4th place, coming off the wall in the AUAA championships of the following year, when he called on the kind of reserves that only champions have. He finished 1st, and then swam well enough to the nationals, to make the CIAU finals. That, ladies and gentlemen, makes this seemingly limited success more of a mark of Andrew Cole's character than the championships already described. When he came from behind at the AUAAs to win the breaststroke, a teammate, Ralph Agerstream, had a reaction to Cole's comeback which is probably not different than that experienced by most of the younger swimmers around at that time. He recalls that it was the race he thought of every time he had to push himself for the rest of his swimming career. That's the kind of an effect this guy had on younger swimmers. Andrew Cole has certainly paid a price for his swimming success, but he's also gotten much from the experience his swimming provided. He's represented Canada on many occasions. He was a member of Canada's World University Games team in Kobe, Japan, 1985. He was on Canada's national tour team to Australia in 84 and Japan in 1988. In 83, he was a member of the Canadian swim team, which competed in the Pan-Pacific International Meet in Tokyo, where he just missed medaling, placing 4th in the 200-meter breaststroke. He toured Australia and New Zealand with the Canadian team in 1984. He'd be the first to admit that he didn't do all this by himself. In fact, if his mom hadn't had his suit cleaned and set a time for him to get his hair cut, we'd be looking at a much different hero over here right now. Left on his own, I'm told one of his Truro swimmers, he coached in Truro before he started coaching UMB. One of his Truro swimmers said twice, left on his own, he ended up at the pool at 2 a.m. in the morning because he couldn't get the time right on his clock. So he does need help. He's so revered by his fellow coaches at UMB that they've changed his office 3 times in the short time he's been there. In fact, on April Fool's Day, they even redecorated it. Our 7th inductee tonight, ladies and gentlemen, a man whose smile you wish your sons had, but warn your daughters about. UMB swimming coach, a man who's represented Canada around the world, 11 times an AUAA champion, 10 times a CIAU finalist, 8 times a medalist, 2 times a Canadian champion, a man who, in returning to national level competition after suffering a terrible accident, epitomized the kind of commitment and dedication we all want our kids to emulate. Mr. Andrew James Cole.
Well, that great smile is still fixed. I would ask Andrews Dalhousie coach Nigel Kemp if he would please join us here for the presentation. Andrew, your brilliant career has been so well documented by Sandy tonight that to review it again would be rather redundant, but there's a lot of people here, I'm sure, who are just as interested in knowing what you're doing today.
Well, actually, I think I got so much from the sport, and in particular from my coaches, David Fry and Nigel Kemp. And I never realized quite what they went through until, in fact, now that I'm coaching. In fact, now I'm at the University of New Brunswick, and Nigel and David are my competitors. But I guess my goal is to try to get the same things and give the same things to the athletes that I'm coaching now that they gave to me. And I learned so much from them. I think more than just swimming skills, but more life skills, and you can learn a lot from this.
You chose one of the most demanding of sports, one that requires so much self-discipline. Do you find that today's athletes coming along at the same stage have the same kind of commitments as you and others had? Qualified.
The pause.
You hope so.
I'd like to think. I know myself, I think I garnered a lot of my encouragement and support from my family, my friends, and my coaches. And because of that, I was able to push myself to some extreme limits. And my goal as a coach now is to try to get the athletes to push themselves to limits that they didn't think were possible either. And it's just pretty surprising. I'm coaching a few athletes now that are surprising me and themselves, so that's great.
Are we on the way to establishing new and greater standards of swimming in this country?
Like to think. We'll work hard trying anyway.
Of all of the many accomplishments in your career, is there any one that is the highlight?
I thought about this earlier, actually, and one thing that stands out doesn't stand out. What stands out are my friends and my family, and when I travel, I get to meet all the people that I made friends with, and I have to really thank everybody for coming here this evening because, as you may know, there's people from all over North America here, and it makes me feel really great that you came.
Andrew, thank you very much. Congratulations again. And let's hope you get a stationary office up there.